Hello, it's your village boy again, reaching out to you from the Village Boy Academy. Thank you for those who have subscribed to our channels. Thank you for those who have shared with their friends and those who have consistently watched our channel. We are indeed very grateful. Don't forget to always watch, subscribe, and share with friends. Don't keep good things to yourself alone. There's love in sharing. Thank you. And we also appreciate those who have given us feedback either on the YouTube channel or those who have reached out to us privately, seeking for some clarifications about some of the statements we made. So we appreciate. Please keep those coming. It helps us to understand what area that we need to give more clarity than before. So today we'll be going to look at what constitutes our cost of sales, our cost of goods sold. Like I said in the last video, I was going to take sufficient time to explain the component of direct cost and indirect cost. And of course, for the purpose of your cost of goods sold or cost of sales, it is your direct cost that is relevant. We try to differentiate between those who produce, the producer, being those who are into manufacturing, no matter the level of manufacturing you are involved into. The cost of sales might be a bit different, more complicated than those who are doing buy and selling, who are selling the goods that have been produced by another party. So they are different, but each of them have their element of direct cost. To start with, direct cost has three components, which are called material, labor, overheads. Your material are those physical things that you put into your production. Again, that's your standard example of a loaf of bread. You have your flour, you have your margarine, you have your sugar, and you have other things, yeast or whatever other components that you put together to develop a loaf of bread. So that material that you put to it directly is called a direct material for the purpose of producing the bread. Your direct labor, the process of mixing and putting it in the oven, bringing it in the oven, checking it and all that, those are direct labor, because with that production, that particular labor may not have occurred. So then your direct overheads are those things that the other expenses you incur, which are not labor, which are not materials. Now, for instance, the electricity or the gas you use during that specific period that you are baking that number of loaves. That is a direct expense, direct overheads. Of course, you can also decide to charge a direct rent to that period, to that production process. Maybe by way of time. Maybe you produce you can allocate a cost of your rent as direct cost. Cost allocation is also a different subject matter again that I will not be going too deep into in this episode. So when you put all these costs, the cost of your material, the cost of your labor, the cost of your overhead, that can be directly attributed to that particular production process. It could be in a batch. For example, when you produce a batch or a shift, so what you produce in that, all these costs that can be directly related to that batch or to that shift, you aggregate them together and you now divide it by the number of yields. For example, the number of loaves you make in that period, for that batch, for that day. So that will now give you your unit cost. So your unit cost of sale per the loaf of bread made. So this is your direct material for that, direct cost for that loaf of bread. If you are the one also that supply wrapper to the seller, in which case each unit of bread, you wrap it. So the wrapper per unit also constitutes directly material for that loaf of bread. So when you put all this together, then you have your cost of sales. Like I said in the previous video. So when you have determined this cost, the average cost per unit produced, you can now say this is my cost. It is upon that cost you can now say I want to add a markup to determine my selling price. However, there are things I have to emphasize. Your direct cost per unit may not be consistent. For instance, you loaf of bread every day in a month. It doesn't mean that your direct cost, your cost of sale per loaf of bread is the same every day. And these are a few reasons why. One, when you put in your direct material, for instance, the yield, maybe per kg of a flour, will always vary. It will not be consistent all the time. And there are various reasons why it is so. One of the reasons is like if there are wastages, especially if you employ new hands, or an employee is angry or is not paying attention to the process, there may be a lower yield sometimes. Of course, if you also buy your material, your raw material, your input from different sources, so the quality of each source may not be the same. So this may affect the yield per a kg of flour. So that is why it is necessary, when you have done this, you have to aggregate, you have to add all those numbers together and divide it by the number of yield. Then also there is what do you do with wastage? Wastages that you have, are they useful? Are they recycled? Are there things that you can recycle? Is that a byproduct that you can derive from your waste? In such case, in that case, if you can derive some benefit from the waste, so the amount you realize from the waste will be taken away from the total cost of the raw material. So, and when you take that one away, is the net amount that you will now charge to the product. So your cost per unit will be determined by all these factors. But even if there are no wastages, if there are no byproducts, the fact remains that you cannot consistently achieve the same level of yield per a kg of flour. This is very, very important. You must bear this in mind, especially if you are into production, into manufacturing of any product. The yield cannot be consistently the same. Now that is why we always aggregate in a batch the total cost, the total direct cost, and divide it by the number of products that is made at the end of that period, at the end of that batch, or at the end of a shift. Also, there's also what we call work in progress. For instance, when you want to start production, maybe you have a leftover previous batch that you did not complete the process. It is called work in progress. So then you add new product to it, and you also have a leftover that is not a waste, but it's just like you have not completed that process. So it becomes a work in progress, for another batch. So for this particular batch, you have to first start with the work in progress that you brought from the previous batch, and add all the materials that you put into this particular batch, and deduct the leftover, which will be work in progress for the next batch. So that will now constitute your total cost of materials, of labor. Even labor, or even this one, you can also charge labor in that manner, because for every processes you have endured, you have carried out, the labor component of it is also there. You can maybe you have a means of measuring it either by the number of hours or by the weight of the work in progress and all that. So that will help you determine, the labor you will charge to the work in progress, that you are carrying forward, or the work in progress that you are taking forward. So you are carrying forward, or the one you brought forward rather, and the one that you are carrying forward. The same thing with overhead. So that the essence of this is like, you don't overcharge a particular batch at the expense of other batches. Because if you don't do it this way, there will be the tendency that a particular batch can be overloaded. And it may mean that, your cost of production has suddenly risen because you didn't follow this simple step. And on the other hand, the other batch that is not loaded may look as if, your cost of production, your cost of sale has suddenly reduced. Whereas that is not the reality. The reality is that there is an improper calculation of the numbers. So for us to have a kind of equity in the numbers, you have to pay attention to these simple things. They can be simple. The moment you master it, they become very simple to implement. So your work in progress brought forward with the material you injected into this batch, you add it together, then you take away the uncompleted process that you carry forward to the next period or to the next batch as work in progress. So it is when you have done this, you can also keep, for this number of loaves or whatever products you have made in this batch, this is the actual cost, direct cost that can be traced directly to this product, to this production, to this batch. So now the total cost, you will not divide it by the number of yield, number of product, number of loaves, number of whatever you are producing that you have made within that period. So that gets you your cost of production or cost of sales, which is the same as the cost of sales. So cost of goods sold. So it is this you add to get your selling price. Yeah, so why it is difficult to, because of market dynamics, you cannot be fixing different prices for every batch. So you have to aggregate this thing. So there is the element that you have to pay attention to, that I'm producing, this is my average production cost, this is my average cost of goods sold, this is my average cost of sales. So it is based on that you will now have your price. It is when your cost is going beyond that average, you can think of increasing your price or changing your prices as it may be necessary. But you have to pay attention to most of the things I mentioned in the previous video. That is your direct cost if you are producing. So on the other side, what if you are not producing? You are just doing buying and selling. Maybe the woman that is selling the bread, what will be her direct cost? The direct cost will be the cost it will take her to go and buy the bread, the loaves already produced of bread from the bakery. If she's the one that is buying the wrapper for the bread, the wrapper bought by her will also be considered as direct material. Then the cost of bringing it from the bakery to our house or our shop will be regarded as direct cost. So which has to be spread by the number of loaves she brought in. And of course, if she's renting a shop for that purpose, she can allocate a portion of the rent, either based on hours or a number or day. Today I'm going to take bread for about 3 or 4 times, but all the bread I will take in a day, this is the rent portion for that. Especially if it's only bread the person is selling. If the person is selling so many products, it might be advisable to take rent out as direct cost. Again, for a bread seller, The price may not be determined by the ultimate seller. The price might be determined by the baker, in which case you don't have control so much on how to fix the price. So you don't have so much problem. But again, you can still determine your direct cost of sales. So how much it costs you to acquire the bread, how much it costs you to transport it to the shop or to the front of your house where you are selling it. That will consider your direct cost. So your cost of sales is not your complete cost. That is the essence of explaining this. Because after you have you have brought the goods to a selling point, the other costs you will still incur. And this cost also may have three components as well. It may also have the component of materials, the component of labor, the component of overhead. For instance, for the baker, what will be the component of materials, or the indirect materials? Maybe after you have produced, you load the bread in cartons. Then you mean your packaging, your other things, because these are things that you do in batch. You do some of the material can be reusable, so you cannot even charge it directly to a particular batch. You use and return. I mean, the crate of soft drink, for instance, is reusable. So then the labor, those who are involved in the packaging process, those who take it out, the marketers, those are indirect labor. You have an accountant or accounts clerk that keep your records. That's a part of indirect labor. You have a security guard that keep your premises so that your product will not be stolen. Those are indirect labor. You have your storekeeper who keep all the stock of raw material when they bring it in, the stock of bread where you are keeping it another store. Those are indirect labor. And of course, your lighting, your advertising, if you're advertising your product, you do be handbills, you can even maybe your advertisements in the social media. Maybe you are paying Facebook to advertise for you, you are paying this and that. All these are indirect costs, indirect expenses. And because you cannot trace them into a singular product, you have to aggregate them over a period of time. So that is why when you, like I explained long time ago, that is why your gross profit, which is accumulation of your margins, is not your final profit, because you still have to incur this cost. The cost of training your staff, if you have gone to that level, those are indirect overheads. Your rent, especially you have multi-products. You have a store where you sell all kind of things, a supermarket and everything. Your rent will be indirect overheads, your electricity, and all those stuff. So when you do all this one, this is when you aggregate indirect expenses, direct costs, that you have your net profit. And of course, after that, you now deduct tax. After you appear your taxes, then you have your bottom line. So to determine your price, what is relevant, like I said in the last video, is your direct cost of material, your direct cost of labor, your direct cost of overheads. Labor can be a bit complicated, but it doesn't have to be. For instance, the salary of the supervisor in a bakery may not be, because let's say you have two shifts, or you have two groups who are baking at the same time. The supervisor supervises everybody. So you can choose to add a portion of his salaries as direct labor. Maybe you spread it across the various group. Or you can say, oh, supervisor, because I cannot trace down your salary to a particular product, so I would rather take the whole chunk of your salary as indirect labor. Whatever you determine, make sure you apply it consistently. Or you want to charge a portion of the supervisor, arbitrarily to direct cost because, without production, I may not need the supervisor. There's some argument you can make to it. Though at the end of the day, wherever you put the salary of supervisor is still going to appear as part of cost. Why we do this is to help you, to guide you, that okay, when you are determining whether you have made money or not, you have to understand these basic issues. They are not necessarily complicated. Just take time to understand them. And of course, for you to understand them very well, like I keep on saying, the golden principle: keep adequate record. When you keep your adequate record, you are able to separate what constitutes your direct labor or direct materials, what expenses constitute your direct labor, what expenses constitute your direct overheads. And of course, usually every other expenses or costs that will not fall within this direct material, direct labor, direct overhead will fall into indirect cost, which also can still be broken down into indirect labor, indirect materials, indirect labor, and indirect overheads. So the aggregation of all indirect costs is what you take away from your gross profit. Then you get, for you to get your net profit. So this is how business cost is calculated in its various element. Thank you for watching again. Like I said at the beginning, please don't keep this to yourself. Share with friends. Thank you if you have subscribed. Those advise your friend to subscribe. And those who have been watching, who are yet to subscribe. Sometimes we just forget to subscribe. Just press that button and subscribe. And you can even set up alerts so that each time we have a new video, you are informed immediately. Thank you for going with me gradually on this journey of making of helping ourselves to run more profitable business. Thank you very much for watching again. I am still your village boy.